August, 480 BCE, Thermopylae, Greece. Picture this. You are standing at the edge of the world. Behind you, your home, your family, your city. Ahead of you, a sound. Not voices, not drums. The ground itself is shaking. You look east, and what you see stops your breath completely. An ocean of soldiers, not thousands, hundreds of thousands, stretching so far back you cannot see where they end. Chariots, war elephants, elite infantry, every nation on earth marching under one flag. The Persian Empire, the largest military force the ancient world had ever assembled, led by Xerxes I, King of Kings, a man who bridged an entire ocean just to reach you, who whipped the sea when it disobeyed him, who does not negotiate, he only erases. To Xerxes, this is not a battle. This is an announcement. Greece ends here. Now look at what stands between him and everything you love. 300 Spartans. That's it. No navy, no backup, no reinforcements coming. Just 300 men standing in a corridor of rock and dust, so narrow, an entire empire cannot fit through it at once. By every rule of ancient warfare, this should be over before it begins. Now watch what happens. For 3 days, the greatest army on Earth threw itself at that corridor. Wave after wave, elite after elite. The pass held. When Persia finally broke through, it wasn't because the Spartans were defeated. It was because someone sold them. How did 300 men hold an empire for 3 days? And what finally ended it? By the end of this video, you will know exactly how.
To understand Thermopylae, you need to understand what was coming. This wasn't just an invasion, it was personal. 10 years before Thermopylae, Xerxes' father Darius had tried to crush Greece. He landed at Marathon. He brought the full weight of Persian power. And a small Athenian army, outnumbered, outgunned, ran straight at his soldiers, literally sprinted, and broke them. Darius retreated, humiliated. He spent the rest of his life rebuilding, planning revenge. He died before he could finish it. His son Xerxes inherited everything: the army, the ambition, the grudge. And Xerxes refused to do it small. He ordered bridges built across the Hellespont, the strait separating Asia from Europe. Nearly a mile of warships lashed side by side, planked over with timber and soil, so an entire army could walk from one continent to another. A storm destroyed the first bridges. Xerxes ordered the sea whipped, 300 lashes, for defying him. Then he built new bridges. This was not logistics. This was an empire rearranging the world. City after city watched that horizon and surrendered without a fight. They sent earth and water to Xerxes, the ancient symbols of submission. Your land, your rivers, yours now, great king. Most of Greece folded, but 2 cities refused: Athens and Sparta. Both had thrown Persian messengers into wells when Darius first demanded submission. That act alone was a declaration of war. Now the war had arrived. Here is what most people get wrong about Thermopylae. Leonidas did not march with only 300 men because Sparta had nothing more to give. He marched with 300 because Sparta was celebrating. The Carnea, a sacred festival honoring Apollo, was underway. Spartan law forbade military campaigns during religious festivals. The same law had kept Sparta away from Marathon 10 years earlier. But this time, waiting was not an option. The ephors, Sparta's ruling council, gave Leonidas special permission. Not a full army, a forward force. Take the royal bodyguard, march north, hold the pass, buy time. But before he left, Leonidas consulted the oracle at Delphi. The oracle's answer was brutal. Either Sparta falls, or a Spartan king must die. Leonidas understood exactly what that meant. He didn't choose his 300 based on skill alone. He chose men who already had sons, men whose families would survive without them. He was not building a fighting force, he was assembling a sacrifice. Leonidas himself was nearly 60 years old. He had never expected to become king. He was the third of 4 sons, not the obvious heir. But fate had other plans, and so did Xerxes. On the march north, allied contingents joined him. Thespians, Thebans, Phocians, soldiers from a dozen Greek cities. By the time the Greek force reached the pass, it numbered over 7,000. Men who understood one thing clearly. If Xerxes reached the south, there would be no south left. They marched into the pass and waited. Thermopylae means hot gates, named for the sulfur springs that bubble up from the earth there. The smell of something ancient, something volcanic, something that has been burning long before any army ever marched through. Modern visitors are surprised by how it looks today. Centuries of silt have pushed the sea back. The land is wide and flat now. But in 480 BCE, that corridor between the cliffs and the Malian Gulf was barely 100 meters wide at its broadest point. At the narrowest section, where Leonidas planted his line, it squeezed to almost nothing. Think about what that does to an army of hundreds of thousands. Numbers become useless. Cavalry cannot charge on ground hemmed in by sheer rock walls. Archers lose their advantage when the enemy is 10 feet away. Chariots are worthless in a corridor built for 50 men abreast. Everything Xerxes had brought, his mass, his shock cavalry, his volume of fire, neutralized the moment they entered that pass. Leonidas had also rebuilt an old wall, built years earlier by the Phocians to defend against the Thessalian raids. It had fallen into disrepair. Leonidas set his men to work rebuilding it the day they arrived. A fixed line, an anchor point, a place to stand and not move. He also knew about the mountain path, the Anopia Trail, a route through the hills above the pass that bypassed the Greek position entirely. Local people from Trachis had warned him it existed. He posted 1,000 Phocian soldiers on the heights to guard it. He thought that was enough. He was wrong, but that comes later. For 4 days after arriving, Xerxes waited. He sent a scout first. The Persian rider approached the Greek camp, circled slowly, observed everything, left without being stopped. His report confused Xerxes completely. The Spartans were not preparing for battle. They were combing their hair, stretching, exercising calmly, moving without urgency. Xerxes summoned Demaratus, an exiled Spartan king living in his court, and asked what this meant. Demaratus did not hesitate. These men are preparing to fight and to die. When Spartans dress their hair, it means they are about to risk their lives. Xerxes laughed. He sent an envoy instead, offering terms. Lay down your weapons. Accept the title Friends of the Persian people. Keep your lives. Leonidas sent back 2 words. Molon labe. Come and take them. Xerxes waited 4 more days, still expecting the Greeks to look at what was coming and simply walk away. They didn't move. On the 5th day, Xerxes attacked. Xerxes sent the Medes first. 10,000 men. Orders: take the Greeks prisoner. Bring them before the king alive. The Greek phalanx met them at the narrowest point of the pass. Picture what that felt like from the Persian side. You have marched across continents. You have watched nations kneel. You have crossed an ocean on a bridge of ships. You march into the pass, and suddenly, there is a wall of bronze in front of you. Shields locked edge to edge, sealing the corridor completely. 8-foot spears layered forward in staggered rows. The front rank protected by the shields of the men behind them. You push. They hold. You push harder. They rotate. Fresh soldiers stepping forward as tired ones fall back. Disciplined, mechanical, relentless. You are not fighting men. You are fighting a machine built for exactly this ground. Xerxes stood up from his throne 3 times watching the slaughter. Not in celebration, in horror. The Medes fell back. Ack. Xerxes sent fresh troops, same result. So he made his next call. The Immortals, 10,000 elite professionals, Persia's finest soldiers. Their name came from their numbers. When one fell, another immediately replaced him. The force never shrank, never weakened. On paper, they were unkillable. They entered the pass expecting to end this in minutes. The phalanx rotated, the spears held, the line didn't move. The Immortals fell back. For 2 full days, the greatest army ever assembled broke itself against a few hundred meters of Greek bronze. Xerxes had tried everything available in that pass. Nothing worked. Then, on the second night, a man walked into the Persian camp. His name was Ephialtes of Trachis, a local Greek, someone who knew these mountains the way you know your own street. He came to Xerxes with an offer, a path through the hills, the Thermopylae trail, curving high above the pass, bypassing the Greek wall entirely, coming out directly behind Leonidas. His motive was simple: money. For that, his name became in the Greek language the word for nightmare. It still means that today. Xerxes sent the Immortals up the path that night. Thousands of soldiers moving through mountain terrain in darkness, guided by a traitor. At dawn, the 1,000 Phocians guarding the heights heard them. Not voices, not footsteps. The sound of oak leaves being crushed underfoot. The Phocians scrambled for weapons. Both sides froze for one moment. Then the Persians loosed arrows, not to destroy, to push through. The Phocians, assuming they were the main target, pulled back to higher ground to sell their lives dearly. The Persians walked past them without stopping. The path was open. Leonidas received the news before sunrise. Runners from the heights, his own lookouts confirming it at dawn. The Persians were behind them. He called a council. Most allied contingents were ordered to withdraw, or chose to on their own. Thebans, Corinthians, Arcadians, over 4,000 men left the pass. They would fight again at Plataea. Their lives still had use. The 300 Spartans stayed. 700 Thespians refused to leave. Their city lay directly in Xerxes' path. If Boeotia fell, Thespia would burn. They had nothing to go back to. They chose to die here, in a moment the world would remember, rather than later, in a moment it wouldn't. Around 2,000 soldiers total. They knew what morning would bring. This was no longer about holding the pass. The pass was already lost. This was something else entirely. At dawn, Xerxes made his offerings. He waited for the Immortals to descend the mountain and close the trap from behind. Then he ordered the full advance from the front. Leonidas made one final decision. Instead of fighting defensively behind the wall, he moved his men forward, into the wider section of the pass. All of them, advancing, not holding, attacking. If they were going to die, they would die killing as many Persians as possible. They would not crouch behind a wall and wait to be surrounded. They would run at the empire. The Greeks pushed so hard that 2 of Xerxes' own brothers fell in the fighting, cut down in the crush of combat. Leonidas died in that assault, shot down by Persian archers deep in the enemy line. What followed was one of the most ferocious struggles in ancient history. The Greeks fought to reclaim his body. They drove into the Persian formation 4 times. 4 times they took him back. When spears shattered, they drew swords. When swords were gone, they used their hands, their teeth. The Immortals arrived from the rear. The remaining Greeks, Spartans and Thespians together, fell back to a small hill behind the wall. Xerxes gave the final order. Persian archers covered the hill until nothing moved. The pass was open. Here is where you have to be honest about what happened. Thermopylae was not a Greek victory. The pass fell. Xerxes marched south. Athens was evacuated. The Acropolis was looted. burned to the ground. If you measure by territory held, objectives achieved, armies saved, this was a defeat. The ancient historians knew it. Modern scholars say it plainly. And yet, something happened in that past that no Persian sword could touch. Not the time bought. Xerxes spent the following weeks methodically crushing Greek resistance anyway. What changed was something deeper, a story. Before Thermopylae, every Greek city that saw the Persian army made the same calculation. The math was simple. Resistance meant death. Submission meant survival. Most chose submission. Thermopylae broke that calculation permanently, because now every Greek soldier across every city had seen something with their own eyes. 300 men held the empire for 3 days. Not because they had better weapons, not because they had more soldiers, but because they had already decided they were not going home. That decision, made by 300 men on a mountain pass, changed what Greeks believed was possible. Persia bleeds. The immortals, unkillable on paper, had been turned back by men who knew they were already dead. The math of empire had been made to look like a lie. There is one more thing history remembers about that day. After the battle, Xerxes ordered Leonidas's head cut off and placed on a spike. It was the only time in the entire campaign Xerxes broke his own code of honor toward a defeated enemy. Think about what that means. A king who had just crushed 300 men with hundreds of thousands of soldiers was still angry enough to desecrate a corpse, because those 300 men had humiliated him in front of the entire world. They had made him wait, made him bleed, made him feel something he was never supposed to feel. Fear. Leonidas knew he was going to die. He went anyway. He chose men with living sons. He held the pass until there was no pass left to hold. And then he ran at the empire with everything he had left. 2,500 years later, you are still watching. That is what Thermopylae really was. Not a battle, a message, sent from 300 men to every generation that came after them. That numbers do not decide everything. That one decision, made by one man in one narrow pass, can change the direction of history forever. Thermopylae did not save Greece, but it gave Greece the story it needed to believe it could win. 6 weeks later, it did. Thermopylae bought Greece something priceless. Not time, belief. And 6 weeks later, a Greek commander used that belief to pull off the greatest naval trap in ancient history. 370 Greek ships against over 1,000 Persian warships, outnumbered, divided, led by a man half of them didn't even trust. But that man had a plan so audacious, so deliberately insane, that even his own allies thought he had lost his mind. He sent a secret message to the enemy, every word of it a lie. And Xerxes, the most powerful king on earth, believed every single word. His name was Themistocles, and what he did next in a narrow strait of water near a small island called Salamis changed the ancient world forever. The Battle of Salamis. Watch it now.